Hey everyone, Andrew here, and it's time for another top 5. Today I'll be talking about the top 5 best Godzilla films, at least in my opinion. And this is the list I'm a little bit more worried about, because the negatives ones, it's like, yeah, we can all kind of agree that, All Monsters Attack and Son of Godzilla are terrible films. But when it comes to the best of Godzilla, like there's one agreed upon top of the list, and mine may not match that. Yeah, there might be some people that disagree with on this, but you know what? It's my list, and these are my top 5 Godzilla films. So we're already starting off with a iffy choice, because I know a lot of people disliked this film, and I have never been able to understand why. And that is Godzilla 2014 by Legendary Studios. And it's like, I get that people were mad when it came out the first time because we were sold Bryan Cranston versus Godzilla, and that's not what we got. Okay, yeah, but Bryan Cranston is in the film. He does a great performance for the shorter time that he is in. And I think the rest of the cast actually is pretty good. Like, maybe not the best in the world, but they do a solid job of holding up the rest of the story. And I do like the main character, who is Bryan Cranston's son in the story. And it's all about him, trying to help his dad get out of jail, and them trying to figure out. Bryan Cranston is obsessed to find out what happened to his wife and why the plant went down, and they end up discovering that it was this giant titan creature known as a Mugen, and it shows up and takes out Bryan Cranston, and then we switch perspectives to the son, and the son is all about trying to get home to rescue his wife and child. And I actually really think that's interesting, and having him be this military bomb expert was kind of cool. And it's like the whole film is shot from, like, kind of his level, his perspective, which is really interesting and really good when you're doing this kind of big creature film, because usually we get the pulled out view where you can see the giant creatures beside each other, and it's really interesting to have one that's told entirely from the human perspective. So Godzilla, is massive, and you have to look up to see him, and then it's like you, and a lot of times in frame you just see like part of his foot, or it takes a while to build up to him, and it's a nice slow build. I know the main complaint you get about this film more than anything is Godzilla's only in 5 minutes, to which I say, yeah, and that's every Godzilla film. Godzilla's barely in most of his films. Are those 5 minutes epic as hell? Yes. And, like, that first moment, I remember seeing that in theaters, and, like, when you first see Godzilla full on, and you just see his feet stomp in, and you just see him, and then he lets out the roar, and it just, I was shook. I was so happy. I was like, because I was getting there, and I'm sitting there going, they better get the roar right, because it's like, that's a staple. That would be like having a lightsaber sound off. Like, you want it to sound like a lightsaber. You want Godzilla to sound like Godzilla. And he did, and I was very happy. And then, of course, it immediately cuts to black, and we don't see much of the fight at all. So I get being mad about that. But it was supposed to be building up tension, building towards that final fight to get you all hyped and excited. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that might have been more acceptable. But in the modern day standard, I can see why waiting for a big fight like that isn't necessarily everyone's cup of tea. And I honestly, I think it's part of it is like Pacific Rim kind of spoiled us, that we saw these monsters fighting close up, and I thought it was more interesting, and I can see what they were trying to do by having it be this human perspective. It's like, well, he wasn't standing there watching this fight. He was running, he was hiding, so we don't get to see the full effect of this fight from this perspective. But you also get some super really interesting shots from this perspective too, because like looking up and seeing Godzilla's foot stomping in front of the airport, and then the base jump from the planes into down, and you just see all of Godzilla's side as you're falling is like super interesting and super cool. I like the characters. I think the effects are amazing. I like the designs. I had a friend who did not like this Godzilla design. She thought he looked too poofy. And I'm like, no, he looks like he's built like a brick shit house. He looks like he can fight, and he looks like he will hit like a truck. So I was 100% behind the, upping him and making him thicker and making him this big, bulky, tough dude. I really like that design. I do like the later designs that Legendary goes for, but I do enjoy this one, and I thought it was pretty good and solid overall. I think the cast is good. I think the story is interesting. I think it's well told. The effects are gorgeous. I will say the ending where that nuclear bomb goes off and everyone's fine is a little suspect. Like, it would have made more sense if, like, Godzilla had eaten it or something, but I I really like that, and I just I love the ending shot where it's like you see Godzilla in the news walking off of the city and diving into the water. I think that's just really fun and really interesting. I'm sorry that some people didn't like it. It wasn't their cup of tea, but I think if you're a real Godzilla fan, you should at least like respect this one a little bit because it's a decent homage to the original Godzilla and the original use of that character. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, 1991. Not to be confused with Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. It's kind of all about this guy who's just studying Godzilla, and he's like, "Oh, I think I figured out where Godzilla came from." There was this incident at Marshall Islands in the 40s where Japanese soldiers were saved by a dinosaur, and I believe that dinosaur was hit by the radiation when they did bomb testing 10 years later and became Godzilla. And he's getting ready to publish the book, but he hasn't published that book. Meanwhile, the humans are visited by this UFO, and a group of three people come out, and they're like, "Oh, we are the Futurians. We come from the year 2001, and we are here to prevent Godzilla from destroying all of humanity, or all of Tokyo, and we are here to help you." And it's like, we have proof, and they pull out the book that the author's been writing, and it's like, we know that Godzilla will be here at this date pre-radiation, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back in time and remove him from this scenario, and then he will not become irradiated, and Godzilla will never be. They decide to go do this, and you find out from the one good Futurian, oh, wait, no, this isn't the actual plan. That what they do is they moved Godzilla away from there, and they left three of their own little creatures there that get hit with the radiation and morph into King Ghidorah, which is why he has three heads, because he's three separate creatures merged together. So now King Ghidorah is under the Futurians' control, and they are going to destroy Japan because they don't want Japan to become the powerhouse that it is in the future, because it basically ends up running the world. And so King Ghidorah starts going on tear and destroying Japan, and Japan has to decide, oh, like, okay, we need to find a way to stop them. Oh, hey, we know of this submarine that sank in the Bering Strait in the 70s, and it had nuclear weapons. Let's get that, and then we can nuke the dinosaur, and he'll turn into Godzilla. And so they nuke the dinosaur, he becomes Godzilla, but however, this is no longer the positive, good Godzilla of before. This Godzilla is now tainted and dark and dislikes humanity, and he and Ghidorah fight. He beats the ever-loving snot out of Ghidorah and rips off one of his heads, and then proceeds to go and try to destroy Tokyo. The one good Futurian is still left alive, and she travels into the future and brings back a new monster to help them fight off Godzilla, and it is Mecha King Ghidorah, who now has a cybernetic middle and head. And it's a really interesting design, and so the Mecha King Ghidorah starts fighting against Godzilla, and Godzilla just keeps hitting him over and over and over again with the atomic blast, and Ghidorah is barely able to withstand it, and he clamps onto Godzilla and takes off into the air. He carries him out of Japan, but they both end up crashing into the ocean and disappear into the sea. And that's how that one ends. And this is an odd one. It's like, I was kind of flip-flopping between, like, if this one should be here, or Godzilla versus Mothra versus King Ghidorah, because that one's also pretty interesting. But I actually enjoyed this a lot. I like the time travel element. I think the story is really interesting. The characters are actually kind of interesting. There's no annoying children, which always helps. But I also like the fact of using, like, it's like, oh, we had a good Godzilla, and then to prevent something bad from happening, because of this Godzilla, we ended up creating a super Godzilla who's evil and wants to destroy us all. And that is really interesting, and that ties into the rest of the series from then out. You get the darker, I'm here to destroy you all kind of Godzilla. And I really like it. I like it having King Ghidorah in there. I think King Ghidorah, especially when he comes back as a mecha, is really interesting. It's an interesting redesign for that character and having him be a little bit, still threatening while also a little goofy. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite of the Toho's. And it's the film that we're celebrating this month for Godzilla vs. Kong 2021. I actually super enjoyed this film. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it had a lot of really interesting stuff to it. So it's one of those films where I have people that are saying, I'm hearing a lot of different things about it, and there are definitely going to say there are flaws to this film. It is not a flawless picture, but it does have a lot of good stuff going for it. So basically, Godzilla has been attacking factories owned by this evil corporation, which you don't know they're evil, but they're clearly evil. And they're, he's just destroying the entire base and everything, and he's being very hostile and dangerous, and they're not entirely sure what to do. Meanwhile, owner of that corporation wants to create something that would help defeat Godzilla and make humans the top species again. So he ends up recruiting this scientist that has this theory about the Earth center being hollow, and this is where all these dinosaurs lived, and all these creatures that are titans or that are coming back are all from there originally. And any other series, I probably would have been like, really? Hollow Earth? That thing? But to be fair, they set this up in the previous film. It is mentioned in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and it makes sense of where these titans have been and why we haven't found them before. So it's they have to go down into the center of the Earth and make it through this very dangerous way, and the only way they can think to do that is to follow Kong, who they have been studying for 10 years, which it's interesting. They've been studying Kong for 10 years, and yet you didn't know that he could do sign language and all this other stuff. But yeah, so they're transporting Kong. Godzilla senses Kong because they have an ancient rivalry. They have a fight, and here's where one of the things that I've heard the most complaints about pops up, and I completely understand and agree. The consistency of the size of the monsters is a little wacky, because you have Godzilla and Kong both standing on a helicarrier. They are both able to stand on that ship without that ship immediately sinking, and yet they're also supposed to be giant, skyscraper-sized creatures. So the size inconsistency is a little rough. But to be fair, they're always a little rough in these Godzilla films. It's one of those, if you can try to turn your brain off to that stuff, but if you have a problem with it, then I understand. Yeah, you get to see Godzilla and Kong fight. Godzilla beats Kong pretty easily the first time, which is good. That's one of the things I had a problem with the original King Kong vs. Godzilla, was they tried to make it like an even fight the entire time, and it's why would this be an even fight? Godzilla has atomic breath, and Kong doesn't have anything. So it makes way more sense to have Godzilla win the fights more often than not. But if they do a good job, and they follow Kong into the center of the Earth and end up meeting with finding this axe that's run off the same power source as Godzilla, and they use that center area to power up a weapon to fight Godzilla. And I'm not going to spoil any more than that, because there's this. But that's, from what I've seen and what I've said, it's so for starters, this film is just absolutely gorgeous. The effects in this are just stunning. There's not a single point where this CGI monkey fighting a CGI lizard looks fake or bad or off or iffy. It just looks gorgeous throughout. There's a lot more Godzilla in this one. He is in majority parts of this movie, but it is a Kong-focused movie. So, you spend more time watching Kong than you do Godzilla, but it's not like the last two legendary ones where they kept kind of Godzilla off to the side, and it's we're going to bring him out for the big fights, but we're going to keep him secret and not have that many fights so we can build up to them. It's like, no, this one's like, no, we're going to have fights, but then we're going to have little lulls in between. And that's one of the other things that this one did well that, I'm sick of hearing with the legendary films that people complaining about the human characters. It is so annoying. It's like, yes, the human characters are bad, as I've said. All of the human characters in every Godzilla film are bad. That's normal. These are not bad humans. They're little one note, maybe. They have like a motivation, maybe two, but they're not super complex. But you don't want them to be complex. It's a Godzilla film. We don't want to have to get into the backstories and understand these human characters. They're not the focus. They're the buffer in between fights so we don't have our heads explode from how awesome these fights are. And these fights are pretty awesome. It's just like there's little moments where it just kind of dips in its quality. Not the fights or anything, but just some of the slower moments. It's just like, okay, what's going on? Why are we doing this? And it's like, it's not like we don't know what's going on and the reasons. It's just like, okay, well, Kong is just sitting on a boat for a while. Not even that long. It just started to feel like a little bit after a while. But I honestly thought it was really interesting and well told. It's got some good stuff to it. I think the ending was a bit rushed. It just kind of stops. And then it's like, in every other legendary one that we've gotten, including Kong Skull Island, we got these, stylized credits at the end that hinted at like possible other creatures and what the next movie might be. And in this, you got the straight black and white credits with nothing. And it's like, oh, okay. But overall, I think these are really like just small little nitpicks, and it just the rest of the thing is so pure awesomeness that it's just so much fun. And that's one of the films that I'm like, how can you not like this? This is a lizard beating the shit out of a gorilla, and it just is so much fun and so well done. I absolutely love the film. Now, I'm hoping this film does well enough to warrant a sequel or a spin-off, because I would watch another Kong film, I'd watch another Godzilla film. I think these films are amazing and really well done. I love the effects, I love the way the stories are told, I love the way the fights are done. It's really interesting and fun to watch and just leaves you pumped up. I watched this in a normal theater, and I was sitting there going, I wish I had gone and seen this in IMAX and 3D, because this would have been so cool to see on an IMAX screen. And I'm not that person. I don't give a dang about IMAX screens usually. There's only a handful of movies that I've ever seen where I'm like, ooh, this needs IMAX. This is one of those films where I do recommend watching it in like IMAX or something, because it is so gorgeous and so big and so well told. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Yeah, so I really, really, really enjoyed this film. And it's kind of interesting to compare this one to Godzilla versus King Kong, because there's similar-ish in style, and it's like Godzilla vs. Kong has a lot more fights and a lot more action-packedness to it, whereas Godzilla King of the Monsters has a little bit more of that slow burn. It's more about the characters, it's more about the, setting up the lore and setting up the world, and I really enjoy it. I enjoyed every part of that. I enjoyed the story, the acting, the characters. And this is the other one that everyone complains about, the stupid humans. And I'm like, jeez Louise. And I accept it for only one character, which is the surprise villain. Because her motivation is so dumb. Their plan was like, oh yeah, we're going to bring out all the Titans, because everywhere that the Titans have attacked in the past starts to flourish and grow, and nature starts to get super empowered by that. So we're going to use that to save the world. And I'm like, yes, but that's going to kill billions of people. I'm like, if you're just going to kill billions of people, why not just go kill billions of people? Why use these kaiju to do that if you think humans are the problem? Yeah, and so her logic isn't the best, but that's the only one I will take that argument for. I actually like the rest of the human cast. I actually think that you have a decent lead playing as the father trying to find his ex-wife and child, and I really love Ken Watanabe's performance in this, and when he goes down to give Godzilla to save Godzilla and give him more, atomic energy, and it's like saying goodbye to an old friend. It's like, wow, that's just he brought so much elegance and grace to this film, and I love the fight sequences. I love the aesthetic, this epic scale and this epic level to it. Like watching uh Rodan come out of the volcano and just fly over the city and then the air catching fire from him is just amazing. Like the effects in this are stunning and the redesign for these characters is so good. Like you made Rodan interesting. Like Rodan is one of the more boring Godzilla monsters. He's just a pterodactyl. But now you made him a volcano pterodactyl that makes fire from his wing breath. And you made Mothra even better. And it's like you gave her a stinger, which so she has a weapon that other than her wings. And the idea of making her like the second in command and Godzilla's kind of mate, like his queen to his king type of thing was really interesting, really well done. I love the Godzilla design. I love the Ghidorah's design. I love the fact that each of the heads has its own personality, and like the center head has to keep them in control. It's just so beautifully done and well told. I love this. I actually like the fact that it's a bit of a slower burn. I mean, it's like the perfect balance in between the 2014 version and the Kong version, where it's like you get enough fights to keep you entertained, but you also get that slow build up, and you get a little bit of that epicness and a little bit of that grandeur. So every fight is important, and every fight has some more meaning to it. Whereas in Kong, after a little while, some of the fights you're like, wait, why are you guys still fighting? Like, other than for the sake of fighting. But I do enjoy this film. I enjoy it a lot, and I'm really sad that a lot of people didn't enjoy it. Like, I don't understand why. It's just a fun, goofy, all over the place kind of action film that's epic and grandiose and full of good characters and good heart, and just is a gorgeous film to look at and watch. I mean, I think the Legendary series gets way more hate than it deserves, and I really liked it, and I really hope we get more. Like I'm hoping Godzilla vs Kong does so well that they make enough money that like yeah, we're gonna greenlight 3 more. We're just gonna keep doing this because we keep making money. I'm like I would love that, but we'll have to see. So some honorable mentions. Well, I guess I have to talk about the one that everyone's gonna be like, well, this is probably your number one, right? And sadly, no, but I do enjoy it, and that is Godzilla from 1954, the original. And I do like this film. I don't think it's a bad film. I think it's a little bit slow. It's a bit hard to kind of wrap your brain around it sometimes, especially like I've watched both the Americanized version and I've watched the original version, and the original version is dramatically better than the Americanized version, but it's still like it's got some peaks and some stuff that's just kind of hard for me to follow, and it's like I respect it. I like what it started. I like that it created this universe, and is a really deep, interesting idea to look at, the cost of nuclear fallout and the damage that it would ravage onto a country, and telling it through a person in a giant lizard suit is actually really deep and really interesting. But it's not a film that I want to watch over and over again, and I don't know. I'm like I plan to watch it again, give it an change, and might change my opinion on it if I give it like 110% of my attention. It's arguably might be the best, but it's not near my favorite. It's not one I enjoy watching over and over again. Sorry. I also really liked Godzilla versus Destroya, which is really good. That's the first one where you get Burning Godzilla, and it's just you get this really good villain in Destroya who has different forms. So it's like when he starts out, he's at a human size, so he's a dangerous threat to humans. But then as it gets bigger, he becomes an even bigger threat. And like Godzilla barely manages to win. But it's like how much effort and energy it takes into slowing down Destroya, let alone defeating Destroya. Is really interesting. I also really liked Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. I mean, it's one that you see that title and you're like, really, this is the title we're going with. Godzilla versus a space version of himself, really. But I think it's interesting. He's like ice-based. He's got a little bit more viciousness to him. It's an interesting head-to-head for that one. Oh, one I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to. It's like it's not one of my favorites, but it's definitely a lot of fun. I do recommend Godzilla versus Megalon from 1973. It's one of the dumbest ones. There's a Mystery Science Theater version of it. I recommend it if you can find it. It's just so ridiculous and so stupid. It's like you start off with this kid riding this giant water bike for no reason, and it's like, why do you have that? And it's all about this robot called Jet Jaguar, and he has his own theme song at the end, and he can shrink from a human size to a giant Godzilla size, and Godzilla just drew a drop kick like 3 times from across the stage in the dumbest way, where he just goes, boop, like, yeah, it's so dumb, but it's so much fun, and I do recommend it for that reason alone. Godzilla Final Wars. Intended to be the last Godzilla film ever made, and that's saying something. We didn't get another one for 10 years, which is pretty impressive considering. And it's just such a well done film. It is such a great homage to the entire series. So the beginning of this film is basically like you start off with Godzilla, and he's been attacking Japan, and the Japanese managed to push him off into Antarctica using Gotengu, and they managed to trap Godzilla in an ice cave and freeze him, and that brings peace to the Earth. The entire Earth is now under the protection of the Earth Defense Force, who are there to fight the giant monsters, and a majority of the people that are in there are these humans with psychic and superhuman abilities known as mutants. So this one does a lot of the things that people complain a lot in Godzilla films. It is mostly human focused. Godzilla is in very little of the film. He's in like the first 2 minutes and then the last half hour. But the majority of the film is focused on these human characters. And, and the plot is a little out there. But honestly, I think these human characters really work. You really do understand and sympathize with all of these characters. And the plot line is pretty similar to or Destroy All Monsters, where it's like this alien force comes in and they try to be friendly. They're like, oh yeah, we're on your side, we want you to believe in us. And you find out they're actually evil, and they have corrupted all of the other titans or kaiju or whatever you want to call them, and they are now under this control. So like I said, Destroy All Monsters would be really good if you used the later creatures. So the humans that are on the good side are like, okay, so we have to do something. And they steal Gotengo, and they're like, okay, well, we have to find a way to stop this. The only thing that can destroy these monsters is a monster they can't control, and that would be Godzilla. And so they release Godzilla knowing there's a good chance that when he's done, he'll try to destroy the rest of the world. And so they make this elaborate plan to go and do this, and the guy running the whole thing looks like the mayor from freaking Final Fight. He looks exactly like him, and it's really good performance from him, and it's really interesting. And I really like his character and where he comes from. It's like, I'm the one that helped trap Godzilla the first time. I will let him out this time. And the movie becomes a video game hallway fight where basically Godzilla goes from like one monster to the next, beating the ever-loving crap out of them. And it's just so cool and so interesting. You even get a point where Godzilla ends up fighting Zilla, the main Godzilla from Godzilla 1998. And he just takes out Zilla in 2 hits. He hits him with his tail, and he blasts him with the atomic breath. And the main villain goes, dang it, I should have never trusted that fish breath. It's just taking more easy shots at Godzilla 98. And it's really well fights. They're really interesting. You get to see each era of Godzilla kind of depicted in each of these fights, with him fighting Caesar, and him fighting Godzilla, and him fighting Monster X, and just so interesting. And you get to the point where, Godzilla eventually does win because it's Godzilla. And you're like, oh, he may turn and destroy all of humanity. But during the entire story, you've been also following this little boy and his old grandfather, and they discovered this small creature who turns out to be Manila. And Manila shows up and grows bigger and convinces Godzilla to not harm the humans and to give up his revenge. And so they walk out into the ocean as the sun is setting, and it's just a beautiful ending. It's a beautiful way to end this kind of series with Godzilla as both the hero and still this destructive force that he's always been. And this was the intended original ending, and I think this is why they did Shin Godzilla instead of just calling it Godzilla. It's like, no, this is the canon ending. This is how Godzilla series ends. I really do love it. I think it's really well told. I think it's got a lot of good action, a lot of good storytelling. It's got the characters are interesting. I like the idea of superpowers and the psychics and to fight, and just that ending fight scene alone is enough to make this film just a masterpiece to me. I mean, I could probably find flaws to this if I wanted to, but honestly, I just enjoyed the heck out of this film. It's just so much fun, and that's really impressive considering how little Godzilla is in this. Godzilla is such a small part of this film, and yet I don't care. It is such a good film overall that I just enjoy every minute of it, whether Godzilla's on screen or not. And that's my top 5. What do you all think? Is there a film that I didn't talk about that you'd like me to hear talked about, or that you personally love and think is the best? Do you think I didn't give enough love to the original Godzilla films? Let me know in the comments below. Happy watching. Bye.